All right, thank you. Next up, we have Tim Delbridge from University of Minnesota.
Thanks, Brian. I went back and forth on this, but I'm going to add a question mark in there because I've got some ideas about the economic barriers to organic transition that I'll talk about with a little bit of data. But I'm really curious to hear what other people think about these other barriers or potential barriers that I have some ideas about. Let's start off. So Tom was talking about farm performance of dairy farms, specifically in Wisconsin. I'm going to talk about farm performance in Minnesota. I've got some data from crop farms and from dairy farms both. And really the focus of this project and these data is the performance of farms as they go through the transition, as they go from conventional to transition to organic. And this is coming all out of this project. It's a 4-year turned into a 5-year project funded by a USDA NIFA grant at the University of Minnesota with a fairly large team of project partners. And the objective really is to enroll transitioning and recently certified farms in Minnesota, collect data on their farm performance, both production data, expense data, and farm financial data, and see if we can see some patterns in terms of cost of the transition. Until really, other than this, there isn't a lot of data that exists on farm level performance during transition, and that's really the gap we were trying to fill here. I do want to mention a plug. If you're interested in transition and kind of the different approaches and different strategies for transition, Gigi DiGiacomo, her office is right next to mine. I can still never say her name correctly under pressure. Gigi DiGiacomo has done some really great farmer profiles that we have up on the eOrganic Tools for Transition website. So I could put the link up there, but I think the best way to do it is just to Google eOrganic Tools for Transition, and there's a really nice website with some great farmer profiles. Project partners, we've got a lot of them. They're all great. So that's different than Rob would have done it, but don't tell him. So just for a little bit of a motivation, this isn't a surprise to most of you, but this is just a graph plotting organic field crop acreage over time for Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and then the U.S. total. And we had really strong growth in organic certified organic crop acreage through 2008, and since then it's leveled off. When we started this project and putting this together in 2009, 2010, these data hadn't been released yet, the most recent stuff. And we were kind of looking at just thinking, what happens during the transition? What's the cost of transition? And over time, the question really solidified into, why aren't more people transitioning? Is this transition cost, is the financial difficulty imposed by the organic transition serving as a primary barrier to further organic adoption? As with many economic studies, the answer is maybe, or it depends, right? Yeah, right. On the other hand. So a little background on the participants in our project. We have enrolled 46 farms. So we started the project in 2010, which unfortunately was right at the time that nobody was transitioning. So it was not an easy time to find transitioning farms in the state of Minnesota. I think we got close to all of them. We enrolled 46 farms, and this is crop farms or dairy farms. We've got 2 beef farms, but we didn't do any specialty crops. Of those 46 farms, when they started with the project, there were 18,000 acres under management, which is an average of just under 400 acres a farm. The key point here is that these farms are all at different stages in their transition. Of those 18,000 acres, a quarter of it or a little bit less was in transition. About half of it was already certified, and the rest was conventional. So these are partially transitioned farms. Some's organic, some is in transition. Some farms have conventional acreage, transition acreage, and organic acreage. It really all depends. Some people have conventional acres that they have no intention of transitioning. Others have conventional acreage that's going to be transitioned once they get some things settled. About half of the farms are dairy farms. Average herd size just under 100 cows, so a little bit larger than what that Tom has in Wisconsin, but not too much. And again, the same thing. A lot of these are transitioning. A lot of them are recently transitioned, recently certified, and there are some of these that when they entered the program with us still had conventional herds and were waiting to get their land closer to certification before they started the transition of their herds. So the other complicating factor, and this all gets to the discussion we had if you were over there with Brad Hines and Catherine across the hall about the heterogeneity and organic research and how difficult it is to compare complex systems. We're talking about farms that are much different in different stages of transition. We have farms that are different types of farms, crop and dairy. We have some organic dairy farms that are more pasture based than others. And to make matters more complicated, to make the data more complicated, we have data from 2012 to back to some as far as old as the late 90s. And we're trying to figure out how can we compare somebody's transition from a financial performance point of view that transitioned from 2008 to 2011 to somebody that transitioned from 1999 to 2002. Right? It's a tough thing, and I'll get into explanation of how we did that. So first, I should explain that the data that we collect from these farms is all through the Minnesota Farm Business Management Association, or the Farm Business Management Program. So our project pays a scholarship to enroll the farms in farm business management, and then they work with the farm business management instructors to prepare their data and submit their annual reports. So the challenge is to see if we can show performance from conventional to transition to organic across regions in the state and across years for different types of farms. Right? That's a big task. And the method that we came up with, it's actually pretty simple, is just to compare performance to the farm's regional average in the particular year. Okay, so let's say we've got a crop farm in southwestern Minnesota, and they achieved an organic yield of 120 bushels an acre. Well, if you were just to say, is an organic corn yield of 120 bushels an acre good in Minnesota? Well, it would depend. If it's a lot better in the north than it is in the south, and it's a lot better in 1998 than it is now, right? And it depends on the year in terms of weather and stuff too. So what we do is we take that 120 bushel an acre, and we normalize it, or we divide it by the regional average for that year. So say the county, or I end up using region in most cases, we compare it to the average conventional yield in that region, and let's say in southwestern Minnesota in that year it was 165 bushels an acre. So our ratio is 0.73, or 73% of the conventional. Yep. And so what we do is we can then aggregate all of this data across years and regions and see how do these farms compare to their conventional neighbors over time. So I've got two tables here, one with crop data and one with dairy data. And what we see here, I'm just going to go ahead and open it all up. We see some patterns. Yield, so this is the yield ratio. So again, if that number was 1, I don't know if you guys can see that back there. It's 0.99, really close to 1. That's basically saying that these farms' conventional alfalfa yields were on par with the conventional averages in their region. That number got lower in transition, and then as they were certified organic. We saw the same pattern with corn and to soybean, even to a greater extent. Expenses, the pattern's a little bit less clear, but it's not a dramatic drop in production expenses nor a dramatic increase. And here is what is interesting. You can't do ratios with returns because sometimes you have negative returns and it messes up your ratios. But you can see that let's take corn for the example. When these farms in our group were growing conventional corn, they were making $36.58 on average, less than the regional conventional average net return. Okay, a little bit less profitable than their conventional neighbors. They became, of course, as you would expect, in transition, less profitable by a matter of by $30 an acre. And then when they were certified organic, they became $356 more profitable than their conventional neighbors. So this is on a per acre basis. Similar pattern for soybean, though not as pronounced. Okay, so we sort of see that, and we can get to this in the discussion a little bit more, but we see yields drop in transition and then continue to decline a little bit in organic. But I think that the data show, and this interpretation may vary, but I think that these data show that the transition is costly, but the returns are so much higher for cash crops, corn and soybean primarily. I do have some data on small grains, but it shows about the same thing, so I didn't include it. They're so much higher that you would sort of expect the transition cost to be recouped fairly quickly, right? Organic alfalfa seems to be a little bit less profitable on these farms than when they managed conventionally, although of course there are other rotational benefits of including alfalfa in an organic system. I know I'm out of time here, so.
No, you're not.
Okay.
Another minute and a half.
Just slow down. So with on the dairy side, production. What really jumps out to me here is that these farms, when they were conventional farms, were only producing on a they had smaller herds, 80% of the size of the conventional herds in their area, and they were producing just over 80% of the milk per cow, right? So they're smaller, less productive farms to begin with. Their net returns per cow were lower than the conventional averages, and their profitability, that's rate of return on assets, their profitability, and that's a whole farm measure, was lower, right? They went into transition. Their profitability dropped further, as you would expect in transition. And then when they came out, on average, and again, so there's some nuance here that I won't get into, but on average, the farms that we have on our group, when they're certified organic, have profitability rates at the whole farm level, which is the level that people care about, right? Right on par with their conventional neighbors. So I think what we're kind of seeing here on the dairy side, at least among these farms, is that these farms are smaller than average. Transition's costly, but once certification is achieved, their situation is improved, right? Their profitability is improved on these farms, although you wouldn't quite see that if you just take conventional and organic. You'd say, well, these farms, the profitability is about the same. Why is there an advantage to organic? Well, for these farms, there's an advantage because these farms were underperforming the regional averages before they transitioned. In the cases where we can follow farms, and we can't do this for all farms, but the cases where we can follow a single farm all the way through, the difference is pretty striking. I mean, they really do increase their profitability. So I think it's an interesting result that I think it shows that the transition is a barrier. There is an economic barrier to organic adoption here. I don't think it explains everything. I think there are some farms that would improve their rate of return on assets if they pursued organic certification, and they don't, right? So I listed some ideas, and I think we'll get to some of this of why don't more people adopt organic management. I think a lot of it has to do with uncertainty, technical information, risk management difficulties is kind of a policy issue. And culture. I know economists get sort of uncomfortable when we talk about things like that, but what's that? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
We can save that for after.
Yeah, right.
But Tim, thanks so much.